What's up, football world? I am Bucky Brooks. This is the Bucky Brooks Show, and today we're going to talk about the Jaguars. All things Jaguars. I have the final preseason game of the year coming up on Friday. So we got some nice news and nuggets on the team. But what I want to do today is I want to kind of approach it differently. Training camp is almost over. They're going to make the roster cuts over the course of the weekend. And so with training camp coming to a close, I think it's important to hand out some hardware. Like anytime a season ends, we always have awards. So I want to personally hand out some awards to the Jaguars for the stars of preseason and training camp. But before we do that, let's talk about these odds. Now, I am bullish on the Jaguars. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook has the odds on the Jaguars winning 9.5 or more games right now, playing at plus 125. So we are saying that if you're going to lay that, we're saying that the Jaguars are going to be much better than some would say, like in terms of being a competitive team. And even though 13 may be a lot, I certainly believe that this team is going to win more than 9.5. So I'm all in on that plus 125 number. Now, one of the reasons that I'm big on the Jaguars winning a ton of games, I think they have a bunch of studs that are really going to break out in a major way. And so to kind of signify and kind of put spotlight on some of the guys that I think are going to break out this season, we're going to hand out some awards. And the first award that we're going to hand out is Most Outstanding Player of the Preseason. And if you have been anywhere around town, if you've been anywhere close to being at practice or heard the reports about practice, this will come as no surprise that Parker Washington will be the most outstanding player of the preseason. Parker Washington has picked up where he left off at the end of last season. Thrust into the role as a starter, he really flourished. The connection that he built and established with Trevor Lawrence made it really easy to envision him being a significant playmaker. But I'm going to say, man, I thought he was good last year when I watched him. Man, he's inching into that great category when you watch him play. And it's not just what he does with the ball in his hands. We all expect someone who has dynamic punt return skills to be terrific. I mean, last year, look, he was one of only 4 players in NFL history who's had over 750 receiving yards and 2 punt return touchdowns. On that list, we're talking about Deshaun Jackson being included in that. And we know what kind of playmaker that he was. This guy, Parker Washington, has put in the work in terms of becoming a more refined route runner. He has versatility where he has position flexibility. He can play anywhere on the perimeter at their wide receiver spots. He's developed a rapport and chemistry and a continuity with the quarterback that leads me to believe that he may be the number one option in the passing game when they kick this thing off. When you hear about how they're planning on deploying him and using him in the various personnel packages, it appears that number 11 is always going to be on the field. And I would say when you put your eyes on him, you understand why. This dude consistently beats man coverage. He has a great feel for finding the soft areas in zone coverage. And even though Jakobi Meyers is really established as kind of like the third down option because his consistency and his steady hands, Brian Thomas Jr. has come on like gangbusters and continues to be the big play threat. There is something about Parker Washington, his consistency and his explosiveness that leads me to believe that he is the number one option in the passing game. I am all in on number 11 kind of being number one. And so because of that, he walks away with the most outstanding player of preseason. Now let's go to most improved player. And there are a lot of guys who've really made tremendous improvements over the course of the offseason and is showing up in training camp. But I don't know if there's been a guy who has been more dominant when it comes to the flashes than BJ Green. BJ Green has not only worked his way onto the roster, BJ Green has probably secured himself as the number 3 designated pass rusher on this team, besides Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. This is the guy that is going to be coming off the edge and making things happen. And when you talk to the coaches, the thing that they talk about is not just the pass rushing stuff, it's how he's really grown as a run defender. Being able to set the edge as an undersized defender is important because the first thing they're going to do is when they see him on the field, they're going to run at him and see if he's stout enough to hold up against the run. He's proven time and time again, whether it's regular practices, whether it's scrimmages, joint practices, preseason games, whatever it is, BJ Green shows up. He has shown up. He's shown up. not only as a pass rusher, but as a run defender. And now he's making plays where he's getting the ball away, creating turnovers, and those things. Those are the things that you have to have. And it's one of the reasons why he has really improved leaps and bounds to the point where the coaches are recognizing his value. And it's one of the reasons that I Bleav he is going to be a significant contributor to this team as the most improved player throughout the preseason. Now, award wouldn't be anything if you don't have a comeback player award. And my nominee and the recipient of the comeback player of the preseason is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. Look, it wasn't long ago that we heard the buzz around town that, man, maybe Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be a trade candidate. Maybe he will be traded on draft day. Maybe they'll find a way to kind of move him in training camp, because after a really impressive rookie season, he took a step back in his sophomore season. Even though the yards per catch were about the same at 14.7, it just didn't look like it looked his rookie season when he had over 1,200 yards, had 10 touchdowns, and earned Pro Bowl accolades. I'm going to tell you, that guy that we saw at the first year, that guy that we talked about probably being the best receiver that we've seen in Jacksonville since Jimmy Smith, that guy's coming back. And when you watch him, and this is what I love about the coaching staff and what Liam Cohen and those guys have done, they gave him a list of assignments, a list of things to work on. And he's been very intentional about how he's worked on those things. The route running, the refinement, the consistency in terms of catching the ball, not only when he's isolated by himself, but in traffic, being able to be really comfortable with Trevor Lawrence and connecting more on those big plays, because the explosive element of the passing game was missing. Well, number 7 is all that and a bag of chips. And he has certainly come back to be the playmaker that they want on the perimeter. When I watch him, there's an ease to his game now that didn't exist last year. And so whatever was plaguing him last year, that thing has certainly disappeared. He is back to being the guy that we thought was going to be like a dominant receiver on the outside. He is all the way back. You see the plays, you see the consistent playmaking that he brings. And even though I'm forecasting and predicting that one of his teammates, Parker Washington, may be the go-to guy in the passing game, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to make so many big plays that it's going to be hard to distinguish who is number 1, who is the guy that should be kind of like at the top of the marquee. I think you're going to see a revolving door, an interchangeable set of playmakers that share that number 1 role. But Brian Thomas Jr. is the designated big play specialist, and he certainly has come back to be the player that we thought that he would be in year 1. Can't wait to see how it plays out in the regular season, because he's been spectacular over the course of the offseason, and we've seen that show up in practices throughout training camp. Now, let's go offensive rookie of preseason, Emanuel Pregnon. And this is a bit of a surprise, and I would say it's only a bit of a surprise because, one, he was a 3rd-round pick. And I would say, in talking to scouting buddies around the league, there's a bit of a surprise that he ended up in the 3rd round. But that is what it is. You get drafted where you get drafted, and now it's on you to outplay your status. He is already outplaying his status, and he's certainly in the conversation to be that starter at left guard. And the thing that you love about him immediately when you watch him play, physicality, toughness, violence, all those things show up. But then when you dig deeper and you ask around, hey, what's going on in the building? What is he like? First one in, last one out. You got to drag him out the building because he's so committed to making sure that he's doing everything that he can to put himself in a position to succeed immediately. And then when you watch him with the starters and you see how easy he gets along with them in terms of the communication, in terms of being up to the standard that has been established in that room, man, you feel great about them. Ezra Cleveland has benefited from the fact that Pregnon has been there and pushing them. And now the conversation is Cleveland going to right guard and them reshuffling the deck to try and figure out a way to put the best 5 on the field. I will say this. Emanuel Pregnon originally was kind of slated to be a redshirt, a guy that during his first season, you didn't have high expectations. You didn't expect him to be on the field much. Yeah, all those things, that's out the window. There's a lot of optimism about this guy stepping into the lineup and making things happen at the point of attack. And I'll say this, every team need someone up front that can be the point of the sword, someone that can be the tone setter when it comes to establishing the standard and the tempo and the way that you operate. His physicality, his toughness, his finish shows up on tape. And it's one of the reasons why I Bleav right now he is the offensive rookie of the preseason. Defensive rookie of the preseason. This is interesting because this one's a tougher one. I'm going to give it to Jaylen Husky. And Jaylen Husky is the safety from Maryland. And the thing that you'll notice around the league is trending where you're having more guys that are playing safety that have extensive experience at the collegiate level playing corner. One of the reasons why is because you want these guys at safety that if the team lines up in 11 personnel and you want to play your base, that the safety can go down and handle playing the slot receiver, or he can match up with the tight end when he's split out wide in some of those what we call YOZ formations where you put the Y outside of the flanker to see if you're in man or zone and those things. But Jaylen Husky has shown that he can do that. The other part, and maybe the most important thing that he's shown, is his ability to make things happen on special teams shows up. Big, fast, physical. That right there gives you a chance to be on all the coverage teams. And then when you have a knack for the ball, meaning you can slither off blocks, you find a way to make plays on the returner, on the ball carrier, and you tackle with what we call a little pop, a little thump. Now you really ingratiate yourself to the team because the special teams coach will vie for you and fight for you and say, hey, there's absolutely a role for him on this. And then the defensive back coach feels good because, man, if you can get on special teams and show that you're worthy of getting a jersey each week on the active 46-man roster, well, now we can create opportunities for you to get on the field in situational packages, whether it's a dime package with 6 DBs on the field, big nickel, quarter, whatever that is. He has now created value for himself that will enable him to not only be an active player on Sundays, but to maybe be a key contributor as we talk about these young Jaguars kind of stepping up. Now, there were more players that we could have talked about, more players that we could talk about earning superlatives, but those are the guys that stood out immediately to me. And as we get into this weekend where we are going to cut the roster down, and there can be some tough decisions. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say like every team says, oh, man, this is going to be like the toughest decision process that we've ever had because, man, we got so many good players. A bunch of these players are going to go to other teams and those things. Sometimes that stuff is true. I would say in the Jags case, a lot of it is true. There can be some really good players that are let go from this team. They go on to have success in other spots. And I would say that that is maybe a testament to the work that the Jags have done in the evaluation process, whether it's the college free agents, the guys that went undrafted, but they come in and they have a chance to earn a roster spot, or the street free agents who are veteran players who you're trying to identify as guys that can vie for backup positions or add quality depth to your special teams and your extensive personnel packages. All of those things are in play. And so what I want to do is talk about some guys that I have my eye on as we get into this last preseason game. Not saying that this game will determine whether they get a job or not, but my eyes are on them because I do think they have a legitimate case to make in terms of being included in the final 53. Worst case, we're talking about the practice squad. Let's start on offense. Now, I'm not going to talk about the quarterbacks because I think the quarterback situation is already settled with Trevor Lawrence and Nick Mullins. But I will say at running back, man, it's an interesting conversation to be had in terms of who are going to be the guys that are there. We can assume Chris Rodriguez, Beja Tootin going to be there, LaQuint Allen's going to be there, but there's an injury that popped up, which may create a need for a fourth spot. The name that you always hear and the names that pop up to me after being around the games, Jamiari Taylor, who had an outstanding game against the New Orleans Saints where he rushed 20 plus times, had 78 yards, and you saw some really good things from the kid from UVA. And then Amir Abdullah. Now, Amir Abdullah's 12th year pro, a guy who has bounced around and been around the league and just a veteran player who kind of has the experience, the instincts, and the savvy to be a guy that contributes not only as a runner, but as a receiver. Given his experience and given how he can impact the team as a receiver out the backfield, it'd be hard to imagine the Jaguars moving on from him and thinking that he'll be available for the practice squad. If anything, if there is something that the Jazz can see from him where potentially he could be a contributor, I think you have to keep him around. And so to me, in looking at the running back battle, the last spot, if there's a spot available, is between Taylor and Abdullah. I Bleav it's easier to keep Abdullah on the active roster, maybe slide Taylor through waivers and get to the practice squad. We'll see how it plays out with this third preseason game. But ultimately, one of those guys I think is going to make the active roster. Can't wait to see how that plays out. Wide receiver, CJ Williams, Josh Cameron, the young rookies that they used late round picks on, both have really been impressive for different reasons. CJ Williams is just super smart. People talking about him just understanding his role within the team, understands all the different positions, rarely makes a mental miscue when it comes to knowing his assignment, knowing the alignments, knowing the motions and shifts and those things, understanding where he is in the progression of each route. Just a very solid and dependable wide receiver. When you think about wide receiver 4 and 5 on most rosters, they have to be interchangeable. They have to be guys that can understand everything with minimal reps and minimal exposure on the practice field, but yet they can handle the expectations that go along with being there. He certainly has shown that he can do that, and he has the size to be a contributor on special teams. And Josh Cameron, you're talking about an established punt returner from Baylor, big physical dude. You're talking about 215, 220 pounds, who certainly embraces the physical part of the game. He also is a high IQ guy, a guy who can handle a huge volume when it comes to the learning and dealing with multiple positions. I think both of these guys find a way to make key contributions. They find their way onto the team. And we'll see if they can be active each week. But I think they've kind of earned the right to be Jaguars going into the season. Tight end situation shouldn't be a surprise. Nate Boracher, Tanner Goil, young guys you want to keep an eye on. To me, I think they're locks to make it, obviously because of their draft status, but also because of the roles that both are going to play. Boracher being the designated wide, the blocking tight end, which will allow Brenton Strange to go and do a bunch of different things as a pseudo wide receiver and a tight end body. And then Tanner Goil just being a guy who can get better as a blocker, but is also super solid catching the ball. Both of those guys are good. It hurts me because I wonder what's going to happen with Quinton Morris, but I know right now, priority probably goes to the younger guys. So I'm going to leave with those young guys at tight end. O-line, I've already talked about Emmanuel Pregnon and what he can do at left guard. But I got to tell you, I'm curious about Daniel Faalele, the trade that they made last week with the New York Giants to get the veteran to come over. Now, people will talk about his size and his attributes. They'll also talk about the play that's been spotty and inconsistent throughout his time. Here's what I know. Here's what I know about coaches. Man, they love projects. They love big bodies. They love guys who have some versatility and experience. And when you think about this Jags team and what they have and what they've been struggling with on the offensive line, Faalele is going to have an opportunity to kind of be around. I know it hasn't always been pretty, but they just don't make guys like that. So if we talk about looking at the traits could be a saving grace as they look to add depth to this offensive line. Now, let's go to the defense side of the ball. And I've already talked about B.J. Green being one of the standouts in camp, but there's a lot of intrigue on the defensive ends, the designated pass rushers, those guys. Wesley Williams and Danny Stragal certainly stand out. Now, Stragal showed up last year and, look, man, just kind of earned the right up and down in terms of practice squad to active roster designation. But you see the motor, you see the energy, and that continues. That kind of fits what the Jaguars call the Jaguars DNA. Wesley Williams is interesting because I got a chance to watch him at the East-West Shrine Bowl, and he continues to kind of show those same things that he showed in Dallas when we were there. You love the motor. You love the energy in terms of the relentlessness that he plays with. But then when you talk to guys like Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon, and they talk about the young guys and which guys stand out, they talk about his studious nature. They talk about how hard he works on the practice field and how he's close to kind of putting it all together. Because of that, typically you always want to have guys that are developing and are on the rise. Wesley Williams is on the rise. And so I expect both those guys to kind of find their way onto the squad. And more importantly, I think they find their way into the rotation in some capacity. Yasir Abdullah at linebacker is the guy to keep an eye on. Special teams stand out, continues to dominate even in the preseason on special teams. You just see how fast he goes, the motor, how he's wired. He just kind of has that special team standout mentality. And I would just believe that Heath Farwell and those guys find value in terms of what he's able to do on the coverage teams. We talk about how important the third phase of the game is, special teams, and what can you do to create value for yourself. He has certainly done that over time, and I think he continues to do that in training camp. That's why he's going to be around. Cornerback Jabar Muhammad made a great play at the end of the New Orleans Saints game, broke up a pass, game-winning breakup. It's continued to get better. When I look at him in comparison to some of the other young cornerbacks on the team, I think it's easy to see what the team sees in him. Size, attributes, the way that he really attacks the technique. You can see him trying to do the things that have been taught and what he's being coached on. And then he's competitive. And I think when you're looking at that position where maybe you keep in 5 guys, I just think about how Buster Brown developed over time. If I'm going to throw a dart, I'm going to throw a dart on someone who has certainly flashed repeatedly over the course of camp. I think Jabar Muhammad certainly has flashed enough to kind of create an interesting conversation about what to do with him, how to deploy him, how to use him, and what other things to do. And I wanted to go back because I wanted to look at my notes from the game. And I think, look, 1 year out of Oregon, 5'10", 185. 5'10" is considered big at cornerback, 185. And because he only has 1 year experience, I think it's easy to think about, hey, what can we do for him? Is he one of those up and down guys that goes from practice squad to active roster? Maybe. I certainly think he's done enough to pique the interest of the coaches in terms of trying to find a role for him down the line. And then at safety, I talked about Jaylen Husky being one of the standouts, but I'll say this. There's some other guys that are really young and impressive. Caleb Bransaw, a guy who we didn't get a chance to see last year, but was a pretty big draft pick for them. Special teams and the third safety position, he is in a battle with Jalen Husky and Rayon Lane for that spot. So I think these guys, these instincts, the awareness, the IQ, for someone who hasn't played much but has been around and is kind of learning the way of doing things, I think when you've seen him on the field, you certainly are impressed with what he brings to the table. In Lane, you talk about a special teams demon. He was dad at Navy, where he was one of the best special teamers in the country. He filled up the stat sheet in terms of the ball production that he did, not only as a special teamer, but also as a safety. And then right now at the Jags already, year one, he is already one of the best special teams players that they have. Normally, you try and keep that position pretty tight. But I think because of the special teams contributions that Bransaw can make, that Rayon Lane makes and has already made, and the potential that Jaylen Husky has, I think you kind of have to find a way to keep all those around. I think this last preseason game will kind of determine the pecking order. But, man, I expect those young guys to find a way to impact the game. And thinking about last game of the preseason and what you're trying to accomplish, the Jags have 2 scheduled joint practices against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where they'll kind of go through it and get the starters all the work that they want to see. We'll see if they get both of those days done or if they just choose to do it all on one day. But that was the initial conversation prior to this taping. In the game, the last game is going to be all the young guys, all the bubble players just playing. They're going to give everybody the opportunity to kind of show and prove that final look-see when it comes to the rehearsal. And then they'll make some tough decisions the following day. Having lived that life, having been a bubble player and having had to play for my career, for the job, as they say down in Jacksonville, look, man, I relish the opportunity to see these guys kind of do it. There's a lot of pressure that they'll experience, but I think that pressure is great because as an evaluator, you do want to see how the guys react and respond when there's a lot on their shoulders. And look, the weight of being one of the final 53, that will be a significant anvil on their shoulders. But if you can handle that and perform at a high level, more than likely you can handle the task and responsibilities that come with being maybe a key contributor that has to do some things for the team late in the year. This is fun to watch. I know last game was sleepy. It was a lot of bad ball, but I expect a much better effort from the Jaguars in the preseason finale. So that's the pod for the day. Make sure you come back, check out all the cool stuff that we're doing on Bleav. Make sure you rate, review Subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend. If you want to know about the Jags, I am going to be able to give up the goods. But if you want to talk about the league in general, we'll also have a few pods dedicated each week to the league and what is going on. Until next time, I guess maybe the next time we'll see you will be right after all the cuts are done, and we can now have our eyes cast towards the regular season. So we'll start talking about previews, projections, all those other things the next time we get together. I'm Bucky Brooks. This was the Bucky Brooks Show. Until next time, I'm out.